You've been keeping bees for nearly a month. The bees you purchased in your package are dying off, and for the better part of a week, new workers have been emerging. You may note little difference in the number of bees you have because the dying and the emerging are somewhat a trade-off. Second box? Probably not yet. Your hive, workers and queen, habitually move up if there is a second box. Your task is to make sure your queen has the chance to lay back through the cells from which her first round of daughters have emerged. If you see lots of cells open for her to lay in, relax and stick with a single brood box for another week. Feeder. Time to remove it? Probably not. When it is time to put the second box on, you may need to feed to stimulate your bees to draw out the comb in the second box. Drawing out comb requires a lot of calories. In this video, Jerry talks about where you will add your new frames when you do remove the feeder and how to make some minor frame position changes to ensure that your bees evenly draw out all of the bottom box frames. Should you add syrup? If you see nectar in the corners of frames, and if your frames are mostly drawn out, then it is more important to give your queen as many cells to lay in as possible. She can't lay in a cell filled with nectar or honey. Only if you see little stored nectar and you have 1 to 2 frames that still need to be drawn out should you consider refilling the feeder.
We've already gone through this hive, but I found in this hive exactly what I expected to find. I expected to find these first 4 frames hatched out with big hatches in them. They still have capped brood on the peripheral because if you'll think about it, the queen's going to lay in the middle instead of the outside is when she starts. So she's laid back through frame number 1. She's laid back through frame number 2. She has 3 and 4 to lay back through, and part of it's still going to hatch out. She's got a good brood frame here in frame number 6 and a pretty good one here, but room to lay in frame number 5. Frame number 7 is empty except for honey. And there's one whole side needs to be drawn out. So at this point on this hive, you would not want to go past next week without putting a second box on it. Yeah. So this week we'll get by. I want her to lay back through because that will allow us then to put the second box and they'll explode up into it and do a really good job because you hobbyists are going to use foundation. Okay, so this hive looks excellent. She's got brood in frames 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, if I was counting this for frames of brood right now, I would say she's got about 4. Yeah. And because she's got big areas that are open.
We're gonna let them know we're here. Give them a little puff of smoke.
Ah, beautiful! Look at that lid. This is kind of good to see bees all around the hole there. And we can see that they're working heavy in the middle of the box. We're going to look for the queen today. Last week we got fooled. And it's not on the inner cover.
Look at how they're covering all the frames now.
Yep. And we got a good population of bees on frames 6 and 7, which is where you would kind of expect it because that's where they're drawing comb. See how carefully he's pulling out? He knows he's got bees there. Outside frame against the wood. They're not doing anything. Up here, they're just starting. You can see they're just starting to play around coating it. Same here on this side. We've already looked at one hive. This is a little behind the first one we looked at, but they're getting ready to put honey in there. Even though it's kind of nasty weather really to be working bees, I would make sure you're very careful if you come out on a day like this. You have eggs there? Should.
Yes.
Okay, so queen's laying on 6, but they haven't drawn out the bottom part. Over here on this hive we looked at, they'd already drawn that out pretty solid. And now they're down to the bottom here.
All eggs.
All eggs. So
See the pollen here, all the different colors of pollen.
So as the new bees hatched out, if you'll remember last week when we looked at this, these are the only frames that were marked as complete. So they still haven't completed that one. It's about a frame and a half drawn out. So she has plenty of area to work, the hive does.
Oh, this one's a lot heavier.
The queen's on this side right here, Jim.
Okay.
Boy, the queens this year are nice and big. Look how nice and big she is. Again, like we talked the other videos, she walks around to those open cells and sticks her head in them to see if there's anything she needs to do there. There's not much place here for her to do it. So we'll look at the other side. Remember, before you put that frame back in, always check where your queen is, not on the edges. Pretty well drawn out, pretty well filled in. There's areas there she needs to fill in, but pretty good. That's a very good frame. Now, we did not mark that as drawn out last week, and we're going to this week.
Can you get a shot of this, Chris? Look at them. They know something's going on, and they're all down here looking up, seeing what's going on.
See right here, look at this. Yeah, they're going, okay, do we attack?
Please no. Look at that pattern, wow.
So that's frame number 4, and that would have been a frame she laid in later. So I would not expect frame number 4 to have major hatch out on it unless she started laying there. Now you do have a hatch out right here. So on the inside toward frame 3, you have a hatch out. And let's see if we could see any of them coming out. Yep, right here.
There you go.
Right in there we got some. And you can see, right here's one coming out. See it? Just squeezing out. I love watching that. Ah, there's another worker for us.
Any brood there? Any eggs?
There's larvae.
There is no, she has not laid back through this. So that's going to hatch out that side of the frame, and she's going to come back in and lay. Very good. So that's what you want to look for, where the hatch out's been. We want to look and see if we want to look at that hatched out area, and she's relayed. There you go. Look at all that. All hatched.
Now down here you see the drone cells down here, and there's a queen cup right here.
So queen cup right here. Personally, I usually break my queen cups just to look, but it also, I get rid of it so I don't need to worry about it. But that is not there. She's not laid back through that at all.
You see how the queen cup was facing down, where these drone cells are facing out?
Yep, good point.
That's how you distinguish whether or not it's a queen cup or a drone cell. See how that drone cell is sticking straight out?
Don't be concerned if you have a small amount of drones on your hive, on your frame, because the queens the hive in general likes to have a few drones.
And you're going to see them along the bottom.
Let's see what we see here if she's laid. Okay, we got a little bit of eggs in here, it looks like, Jim.
Yep.
So this frame, probably seeing how much of it is hatched out and still hatching over here, this is one of the first week frames that we probably had her lay in. So remember, they would have started laying on day 21. We're day 28 today. So we would expect the vast majority of everything that was laid during the first week would be hatching out. They are bothering us a little more today than they normally do.
A little more feisty today.
Again, major hatch out. So we've had major hatch out here, major hatch out there, partial hatch here.
And she's come back and laid here, and all this is larva.
So we basically, looking at what we've seen hatch out here, we'll look at frame number 1 and see what we got. But right now, we have, just looking at this, we could say we've added about 2 frames of bees to this hive.
Yeah, yeah.
So we started out with 4 frames, and we're now probably to 6 here. Now, we didn't feed some of these last week, and there's very little comb in the feeder. So they just ignored the feeder after we didn't put syrup in it.
We only fed one last week.
Yeah, that one right over there. And look at that.
Honey.
Pretty nice. Now look, they got area to draw out comb here. They got area to draw out here. So this hive can wait another week before we put a second box on it. So we'll look at this next week and see if we need to add a second box. But it definitely does not need it today. But remember, we're going to have at least a frame to a frame and a half of bees hatch out probably during this next week. So she will be sitting on the edge a little bit.
4 frames of brood, is that what you're going to call this?
Yep.
And 6 frames of bees.
Yep.
You want to interpret that sitting on the edge comment?
Well, it'll, by it's sitting where you're looking at it and you're saying, man, do I want to add another box? Well, if you add another box, they'll probably ignore frame number 7. Just leave it alone. Then you're going to add another frame over here and they might not draw it out very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to let them draw this frame number 7 out. So when we add the new frame in here, we'll put it in here between 2 brood frames. They'll draw that out because of that. And then we have a really good drawn out set of frames here. So you go too early and they stop drawing frames in the bottom box because heat rises, the queen will want to come up and lay in the second box. And we're really not ready for her to do that.
IEBA hives show a slight gain in mass over last week. Frames of bees are up 1.7 frames, suggesting that emergence is exceeding die-off. Frames of brood are down slightly, suggesting that the emergence is outpacing the second round of brood laying. Your queen will catch up. As always, if you see significant departures in your hives from what you see in this video, check with the mentor.